Last week on Legally Kidnapped.
Good evening. Our top story this week. Calls to the child abuse hotline double thanks to the media's constant bombardment of the Jerry Sandusky case. Sandusky's wife is mad about the accusations after having to put up another $250,000 for bail as new victims come forward. Meanwhile, advocates are hoping to eliminate Pennsylvania's statute of limitations on child sex abuse civil cases so more kids can come forward with repressed memories and accusations many years later. And experts are coming up with new ways for you to talk to your kids about such media-exploited sex abuse scandals so that you can teach them to stay safe while in the company of other adults. In Arizona this week, a task force of System Sucks wraps up its inquiry into CPS failures. Another task force in Iowa recommends whistleblower protection for CPS rats, and Nebraska is having a hard time keeping CPS agents on the job as the state evaluates their foster care system 4 years after a former foster kid shoots up a mall. A North Carolina sheriff is accusing the child protective industry of neglecting children after workers refuse to respond to deputies' calls after normal business hours. In Ohio, the Attorney General wants a system-wide review of the foster care system after a high number of foster kids remain in the system until they reach the age limit. And in Florida, the Children's Network wins a $27 million contract to provide foster care services for the next 5 years. Oregon claims to see a drop in the number of foster kids who are being fed psychiatric drugs. The state of California settles a lawsuit agreeing to provide mental health services to foster kids and at-risk children under the state's Medicaid insurance program. And California foster kids are struggling to recover from identity theft as soon as they are booted out of the system at age 18. In Minnesota, Native Americans are exposing the devastation caused by the state's Indian Adoption Project. Colorado is separating families caught up in the state's deportation system. And Georgia is throwing the kids of undocumented immigrant parents into their foster care system too. Presidential candidate Newt Gingrich continues his anti-child labor law campaign, saying that poor kids should be scrubbing school bathrooms, but they shouldn't be working in coal mines. Presidential candidate Michelle Bachmann is left speechless after an 8-year-old boy is coerced into telling her that his mommy is gay and doesn't need to be fixed at a book signing. Kentucky Social Services Commissioner resigns. And Georgia's DCFS director is out, and nobody knows whether or not she quit or got fired. The state of Oregon experiments with child support forgiveness programs for dads who are trying to reduce their overall debt. And a new study by the University of New Hampshire finds that fears in regards to teenage sexting are overstated and blown out of proportion, as few kids are actually doing it. In Scotland this week, a judge rejects a £300,000 lawsuit claiming that a social worker was forced into early retirement based on health reasons brought on by excessive work hours and working with violent and disruptive children. Russian officials are pissed after the United States tries to sweep the death of an adopted Russian orphan child under the rug. In Australia this year, thousands of children will spend Christmas apart from their families, and many will behave badly as a way of handling their sorrow. And Australia breaks the UN Convention on the Rights of a Child by jailing kids as young as 13 in adult prisons. In Canada, a foster care worker and parent facing child porn charges is released from prison on a $3,000 cash bail, with strict bail conditions, of course. And the Boy Scouts of Canada apologizes to former scouts who were sexually abused by its scout leaders. In England this week, experts are trying to kill off the traditional family, as only 1 in 6 kids now come from nuclear families and the rest come from alternative arrangements. A British social worker loses a memory stick containing highly confidential data on more than 400 stolen children in Durham County's foster care system. British social workers are fearing another Baby P-style screw-up as a result of budget cuts, staff shortages, and increased workloads. And the Doncaster Council begins a hiring campaign aimed at recruiting more CPS agents to steal more kids. In entertainment news this week, Sarah Jessica Parker is accusing her kids of complicating her marriage. Actor Jack Wagner finds his long-lost daughter, who was given up for adoption a long time ago. We now know where Charlie Sheen's child support payments are going after his ex gets arrested for cocaine possession. And Fox News takes issue with the new Muppets movie, claiming that they are attempting to brainwash our kids with an anti-corporate and anti-rich agenda. In Idaho, 2 foster parents plead not guilty to felony child endangerment. In Nevada, a former foster parent is arrested for physical and sexual abuse of a child. In Tennessee, a former foster mom gets 16 years in jail for starving, binding with duct tape, and imprisoning 2 children in her Spring Hill home. And in Indiana, a 70-year-old woman is arrested for showing up to court drunk when she was supposed to testify in a child welfare case as a court-appointed special advocate. In North Carolina, a new report details DSS involvement prior to a toddler's death in a failure to Protect case. In Colorado, 2 CPS agents are being sued for allowing a 7-year-old boy to starve to death in 2007. In Maine, a couple sues the child protective industry in federal court after CPS agents snatched their adopted son illegally and terminated their rights without even considering a kinship placement. In Ohio, a federal judge rejects a suit against the child protective industry after a man claimed that the state's child welfare agency blocked his tries to get custody of his daughter for years because he is a single dad. And in New Jersey, a woman sues the child protective industry after finding out that her adopted child was sexually abused while in state care. In Michigan, the mother who was accused of shooting at cops who are aiding and abetting CPS agents in the illegal snatching of her daughter for refusing to feed her psych meds is back in court as prosecutors try to overturn a judge's decision to drop the charges. In Nevada, siblings who are separated from each other in the state's foster care system get to spend a whole afternoon together at a Christmas party. In New York, police are finally going to hand over their files to a private investigator who was hired by court-appointed lawyers who have been looking for a boy who disappeared from New York's foster care system 2 years ago. In Texas, the Grinch steals nearly $15,000 worth of Christmas presents that were designated for foster kids. In North Carolina, a school principal is fired after accusing a 9-year-old of sexual harassment for calling a teacher cute. And finally, tonight in California, a sperm donor who fathered 14 children out of his home is ordered to cease and desist as he was breaking the law and acting as a manufacturer of human cells. For these stories and all the latest dirt on the child protective industry, visit www.legallykidnapped.com. And until next week, this is Baby LK, over and out.